Commissioner. Beautiful. Thank you.
She was. We're not on yet. Aubrey, go ahead.
Oh, they got it working.
They did. Okay, so they're keeping the sound off.
That's what it looks like.
Okay,
I just
good.
saw the screen.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. And I unmuted.
And whenever you're
This is Commission President Hamdi Mohammed convening the regular meeting of November 12, 2024. The time is now 10:31 a.m. We are meeting in person today at the Port of Seattle headquarter building Commission Chamber and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Present with me today are Commissioners Culkins, Cho, Fellman, and Hasagawa, who are currently gathered in the executive session room awaiting the opening of the public meeting. We'll now recess into the executive session to discuss 3 items regarding litigation, potential litigation, legal risk per RCW 4230-110, Sections 1I, for approximately 30 minutes.
60.
For approximately 60 minutes, sorry. We'll reconvene into the public session at 12 p.m. Thank you. Clerk Hart.
We are in recess.
Thank you.
Hear me?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. The room is currently unmuted. SCCTV? Thank you. Whenever you're ready. I understand she's joining virtually.
I think she believes to join right about the time the budget briefing.
Wonderful. Clerk Hart, we good?
Yes.
Great. This is Commission President Hamdi Mohammed reconvening the regular meeting of November 12, 2024. The time is now 12:05 p.m. We're meeting in person today at the Port of Seattle Headquarter Building, Commission Chamber, and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Clerk Hart, please call the roll for commissioners in attendance.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a full commission here today.
Great. A few housekeeping items before we begin. For everyone in the meeting room, please turn your cell phones to silent. For anyone participating on Microsoft Teams, please mute your speaker when not actively speaking or presenting. Please keep your cameras off unless you are a member of the commission or the executive director participating virtually, or you are a member of staff in a presentation and are actively addressing the commission. Members of the public addressing the commission during public comment may turn on their cameras when their names are called to speak, and will turn them back off again at the conclusion of their remarks. For everyone at the dais today, please turn off the speakers on any computers and silence your devices. Please also remember to address your request to be recognized to speak through the chair, and please wait to speak until you have been recognized. You'll turn your microphones on and off as needed. All of the items noted here will ensure that we have a smoother meeting. Thank you all. All votes today will be taken by the roll call method or by general consent, so it is clear for anyone participating virtually how votes are casted. Commissioners will say aye or nay when their names are called. We are meeting on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people, with whom we share a commitment to steward these natural resources for future generations. This meeting is being digitally recorded and may be viewed or heard at any time on the Port's website and may be rebroadcasted by King County Television. Now, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Thank you all so much. The first item of business today is the approval of the agenda. As a reminder, if a commissioner wishes to make a general comment for or against an item on the consent agenda, it is not necessary to pull the item from the consent agenda. Rather, a commissioner may offer general supporting or opposing comments later in this meeting once we get to that part on the agenda. However, it is appropriate at this time if a commissioner wants to ask questions of staff or wishes to have a dialogue on a consent agenda item to request the item be pulled for a separate discussion. Commissioners, are there any items to be pulled from the consent agenda or any motions to rearrange the order of the day? Hearing none. Commissioners, now the question is on approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Great.
Second.
Wonderful. The motion has been made and seconded. Is there any objections to the approval of the agenda as presented?
Madam President, I don't have any objection, but I would like to make a quick comment.
Please proceed, Commissioner Hasagawa.
Thank you. I'm going to stay on to this meeting for as long as possible. I'm not positive that I'll make it all the way to the vote. Depends on how long it takes. But I did just want to offer my general support for the budget. And I'd like to express my gratitude to staff and to my colleagues for the long process that's gotten us to this point. And I'm really pleased to see it come full circle today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Hasagawa, for those comments. Next on the agenda is the Executive Director's report. Executive Director Metrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Mohammed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I should say welcome to November. It's hard to believe that we have just 3 more meetings in this calendar year, 2024. Since we last convened, we have celebrated Veterans Day, Diwali, and began Native American Heritage Month. It's important to acknowledge these holidays and events to build a culture of belonging in support of our raised values here at the Port. Since our last meeting, we also learned that the results of the 2024 election. Commissioners, prior to the election, you may have seen messages from me to our staff encouraging people to make their voices heard in the election. As we all know, the national policy can change global markets, and any macroeconomic trends can filter down to our port. As we do every year, no matter who leads the nation, we'll be focused on maximizing partnerships and engagement to make a positive impact through our port. We're beginning that planning process now by looking at the stated priorities of the incoming Trump administration and evaluating where we anticipate an intersection with port programs and going forward. We prepared in January to share some initial thoughts and analysis with you as well. In the meantime, when we get to today's budget presentation, our team will be prepared to answer initial questions about how the change in administration impacts our budget and financial planning. Here in Washington, local policies impact us as well. We are pleased to note that the Preservation of the Climate Commitment Act, which is a win for environmental, economic, and transportation work across our region. We also noted the approval of Proposition 1, the Seattle Transportation Levy, which includes funding for port priorities like street maintenance and modernization, bridges, traffic signals, freight mobility, and environmental initiatives. Elections have a personal impact as well, and the recent presidential election stirred a lot of emotions. Unfortunately, there are groups that are more focused on dividing rather than uniting our nation. For example, I was dismayed to hear about racist text messages being sent via robotext to Black Americans, including children, across our country immediately following the election. In fact, some of our port employees received these messages, and I was disturbed to hear that. They are ugly to read, scary to receive, and wrong. Speaking out against acts like this is one way we affirm our commitment to our employees and to our values. And I want to remind our port staff of all the strength and resilience we possess as a team. Regardless of the political landscape, our core values and mission remain unchanged. We are committed to our work, to each other, and to driving economic development in our region in the most equitable and sustainable way possible. One great example of how we are doing this is through our South King County Community Impact Fund, which the Commission reauthorized earlier this year. Recently, the American Association of Port Authorities, the AAPA, presented the Lighthouse Award to our incredible effort on this program. This recognition was evaluated by an esteemed panel of judges from across the industry and stood out among the entries in the Economic Development Large Port category. Guided in part by our Equity Index, this award is a testament to the hard work and commitment of our Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, External Relations, Contracting and Procurement Office, and legal teams in advancing innovation and excellence in the port industry, as well as being a model for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Congratulations to all for this recognition. November is often a time when we express gratitude, so I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the ongoing work to recover from our August cyber incident. Yes, we're still talking about our recovery from the event in August. Thank you to everyone who's continuing supporting this work throughout the port. We reached major milestones in the last 2 weeks to restore financial software applications. We still have work to do on restoring important systems, and that work continues in earnest. It is critical that we continue to support each other throughout the port as we work through the remaining aspects of the recovery, but each day we make progress. I'd like to thank all of our staff for staying patient and recognizing the incredible effort our ICT and payroll teams have put in throughout this incident. Moving to operations, I'd like to recognize the Maritime Division for wrapping up one of its most successful cruise seasons with over 1.7 million passengers across 276 ship calls. The team marked the end of the season with a press conference last month highlighting the port's third shore power connection being operational. Already a dozen sailings have plugged into clean electric shore power at Pier 66, which was our final cruise berth to be electrified. And the cruise team also notched 2 new customers for 2026. On Monday, MSC Cruises announced it will deploy the MSC Poisea to Seattle. And this vessel will offer 7-day cruise itineraries from Pier to Alaska from Pier 91 and will connect to shore power on those connections. We're excited to have the cruise side of MSC join the MSC container shipping operation that is already here in Seattle. Virgin Voyages also announced the Brilliant Lady will operate with 17 sailings in 2026, beginning on May 21st. Turning to operations on the aviation side, Commissioners will continue our community outreach efforts around the Sustainable Aviation Master Plan in the SAMP in the FAA's National Environmental Policy Act Draft Environmental Assessment. Since the release of the Draft Environmental Assessment on October 21st, our team has been briefing local city officials, councils, and community groups. This week, we kick off 4 public open houses in the cities of Federal Way, Des Moines, Burien, and Sea-Tac. Community members are invited to learn more about the draft environmental assessment, ask questions, and submit public comments. I also have some good news to share that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, responded to several requests, including one by Commission President Mohammed on behalf of the Port for an extension to the public comment period. The Port had already worked with FAA to secure a 45-day comment period, and this additional week granted by the FAA moves the new deadline for public comment to Friday, December 13th. We appreciate the flexibility and responsiveness to community concerns by the FAA. Moving to today's commission meeting, I'd like to highlight a few items. The marquee items on today's agenda are introduction of our budget and our salary benefits resolution. Both of these items are the culmination of many months of hard work by our budgeting and human resources teams. I will have more in-depth comments during the formal introduction of this item, but I want to start today by expressing my deepest appreciation for all the staff who spent countless hours over the last 6 months doing analysis, crunching numbers, creating presentations, updating materials, conducting briefings, and responding to commissioner feedback, all the while bringing systems and data sets back online from the August 24th cyber disruption. This was a major lift, and I am incredibly proud of how hard our team has worked to not miss a beat or a deadline. On our consent agenda, we have our annual authorization for the environmental remediation liabilities. This funding supports the Port's legacy environmental responsibilities. The budget proposal for 2025 is $19.7 million for our legacy environmental responsibilities. Last year, at Commission direction, the Port established the Environmental Legacy Fund, and for 2025, we are recommending an additional contribution of $32 million to continue supporting the fund. This was presented to you on October 27 as part of our Plan of Finance briefing. By setting aside dollars in advance, the ELF helps the Port manage its legacy environmental responsibilities. So with that, Commissioners, that concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Metrick, for that report out. I'm going to move us along in the agenda. We are at committee report. There's actually currently no committee report for this meeting, so we'll move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. The Port of Seattle Commission welcomes public comment as an important part of the public process. Comments are received and considered by the Commission in its deliberations. Before we take public comment, let's review our rules for in-person and virtual comments. Clerk Hart, please play the recording.
Just a moment here.
The Port of Seattle Commission welcomes you to our meeting today. As noted, public comment is an important part of the public process, and the Port of Seattle Commission thanks you for joining us. Before proceeding, we will overview the rules governing public comment for your general information. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak unless otherwise revised by the presiding officer for the purposes of meeting efficiency, and the speaker shall keep their remarks within the allotted time provided. A timer will appear on the screen, and a buzzer will sound at the end of the speaker's comment period. The Commission accepts comments on items appearing on its agenda and items related to the conduct of port business. The presiding officer will ask speakers to limit their comments to these topics. This rule applies to both introductory and concluding remarks. Disruptions of Commission public meetings are prohibited. General disruptions include, but are not limited to, the following: speaking before being recognized by the presiding officer, holding or placing banners and signs in the meeting room in a way that endangers others or obstructs the flow of people or view of others at the meeting, intentionally disrupting, disturbing, or otherwise impeding attendance or participation at a meeting, refusing to follow the direction of the presiding officer or security personnel, attempting to use the comment time for purposeful delay without conveying a discernible message, using the comment period to assist in a campaign for election of any person to any office or for the promotion of or opposition to any ballot proposition except when addressing action being taken by the Commission on a ballot proposition appearing on its agenda, directing public comments to the audience, engaging in abusive or harassing behavior, including but not limited to derogatory remarks based on age, race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, pregnancy, sex, gender, sexual orientation, transgender status, marital status, or any other category protected by law, the use of obscene or profane language and gestures, assaults or other threatening behavior, and sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. For safety purposes, individuals are asked not to physically approach commissioners or staff at the meeting table during the meeting. Individuals may provide written public comment before or after the meeting, and in addition, speakers may offer written materials to the Commission clerk for distribution during their testimony to the Commission. A detailed list of the public comment rules is available through the Commission clerk. If a meeting is disrupted by an individual in attendance in the meeting room or by an individual providing public comment in person or virtually, the port will impose progressive consequences that may result in exclusion from future meetings. Written materials provided to the clerk will be included in today's meeting record. The clerk has a list of those prepared to speak. When your name is called, please come to the testimony table or unmute yourself if joining virtually. Repeat your name for the record and state your topic related to an item on the agenda or related to the conduct of port business. For those joining virtually, when you have concluded your remarks, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone. Our public comment period will now commence. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Clerk Hart, for playing that recording. We do have 2 signups today. I would like to call the first speaker I have is Sandy with Carnival Corporations. Sandy, welcome.
Deputy Clerk Payne, are you able to run the timer today from there?
Sandy Olson from Carnival Corporation.
Can you put the microphone down?
Okay, is that better? Excellent. My topic is cruising. So thank
Sandy,
you.
1 second. I don't think the timer's up, but let's check with Clerk Hart.
It is not yet. Actually, I got kicked out of the system, so I can't open it.
I could also control it from my phone.
One moment here.
Okay.
Give us just a moment. Yeah, some technical difficulty. Give me just 2 seconds here. Apologies for the delay.
I really am. I can start it.
It's logging me back in.
Everyone who has an iPhone is equipped with it.
We just want to make sure that the timer is visible.
Clerk Hart, I'll run it from my phone and then we can use it for the second one.
Thank you.
Sandy, please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to comment today, and congratulations to Port staff for working with the cruise industry to deliver another successful cruise season for Seattle, as Mr. Metrick mentioned in his opening comments. So previously, the Port has estimated that cruising contributes about $900 million in economic value and supports 5,500 local jobs. And this comes from supplying the ships with fresh food through businesses such as Charlie's Produce, as well as relationships with individual Seattle businesses, from Beaches Cheese, Pike Place Brewery, and Homegrown Distillery Westland, to name just a few. But as we look ahead to next year, Carnival Corporation is excited about two other important milestones for 2025. Firstly, we will be celebrating 20 years of shore power in Seattle. And as you know, Princess Cruises pioneered shore power in Seattle in 2005 and became the first to connect. Secondly, our iconic cruise line Cunard will be calling Seattle home for the first time ever. So Cunard's Queen Elizabeth cruise ship, and she is a firm favourite the world over, will make 12 visits to Seattle between June and September next year, bringing an estimated 26,000 guests. Queen Elizabeth boasts a 3-deck royal court. She has a 2-storey library with about 6,000 books, and as you would expect from a ship with British pedigree, as she has, guests can enjoy paddle tennis or croquet or bowls. But I think what...
I don't know why. I can't tell you why. No clue. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Please proceed.
That's better. So I think what may interest commissioners most, though, apart from that, of course, is that Queen Elizabeth will be a draw card for international visitors. So Cunard estimates that about half of its guests will be from overseas, specifically from markets such as the United Kingdom, Germany, Canada, and Australia. And as Seattle continues to position itself as one of the world's great cities post-pandemic, this will be welcome news, I'm sure. One of the often overlooked benefits of the cruise sector is that our brands are doing the hard work of marketing Seattle on the world stage through brochures, websites, and our travel agent relationships. We know that guests spend a couple of days in a city before or after their cruise, and we know that this is also welcomed by the local hotel and accommodation sector too. So I look forward to updating the Commission on other initiatives as we move forward towards next year's cruise season. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for your comments.
Apologies, Commission President, members of the Commission. We are having unexplained tech issues, which just seem to occur. So
No worries. I have a stopwatch here, so I can run point
I'm
on
going
this.
to try to pull it up one more time.
Okay.
It's just the sharing the sound that I think made it not happy. So I'll try that one more time. No?
No.
Okay, so I can bring it up. I'm just going to have to not share sound.
Okay. I will call the next speaker up. I have Matt with ILW Local 19. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't need a timer. I've got it down to 1 minute and 45 seconds.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Matt Ventosa, Vice President of ILW Local 19 in Seattle. Good afternoon, Executive Director and Commissioners. A couple of things I want to address. One is it's very disappointing to see that the EPA and their $3 billion grant money was distributed haphazardly amongst the ports in the country. While some received tens of millions of dollars, while others received hundreds of millions, Seattle received less than $3 million, and it appears that is money for studies when it should be going for electric cargo handling equipment and vessel shore power electrification to reduce emissions. On another note, the Coast Guard's PEIS is supposed to be released later this week, and we're optimistic the Coast Guard's plans would include leaving Terminal 46 as a 2-berth, 85-acre facility, while we support the Coast Guard's expansion on their current footprint and south on non-cargo Port of Seattle land. We look forward to continued work with the Commission on your commitment to keep Pier 46 as what has been outlined in a past resolution as a 2-berth, 85-acre facility. Also, ILW Local 19 is closely monitoring the ILW Local 9 negotiations at the airport. And lastly, I want to thank not only the Port of Seattle and all of the cruise-related staff. I see Linda's here and Stephanie. I want to also thank Norwegian Cruise Lines, Royal Caribbean, Holland America Line, Princess Lines, Carnival Cruise Line, and welcome in 2024, as Sandy had mentioned, the addition of Cunard's Queen Elizabeth that will set sail here from the Port of Seattle. I also want to thank Watts Marine for the excellent work they did to turn Pier 66 into a green terminal so the cruise lines calling there can plug into shore power, reducing the need to run their engines while dockside. 2024 was, as Sandy Olson had mentioned, another great successful cruise season that contributed financially not just to the local economy, but across the country, and we also look forward to the 2025 cruise season. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And you're right, you were right at 1 minute 47 seconds. Well, that concludes our sign up for today. Is there anyone else present on the Teams call or in the room who did not sign up but wishes to address the commission? Hearing none, I'll move us along. At this time, I'll ask Clerk Hart, please give a synopsis of any written comments that we have received.
We have received no written comments for our meeting today, Madam Commission President.
Very good. Hearing no further public testimonies, we will now move on to the consent agenda. Commissioners, items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted by one motion. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered separately immediate after adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items covering items number 8A, 8B, 8C, 8D, 8E, 8F. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your names are called for the approval of the agenda, the consent agenda. Clerk Hart.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
Great. The motion passes. Moving on in the agenda, we have 3 new business items. Clerk Hart, please read the first item into the record, and then Executive Director Metric will introduce the item.
Thank you. I'll be reading for a short time, beginning with item 10A. This is a public hearing and introduction of resolution number 3829, a resolution adopting the final budget of the Port of Seattle for the year 2025, making, determining, and deciding the amount of taxes to be levied upon the current assessment roll, providing payment of bond redemptions and interest, cost of future capital improvements and acquisitions, and for such general purposes allowed by law which the port deems necessary, and directing the King County Council as to the specific sums to be levied on all of the assessed properties of the Port of Seattle District in the year 2025. And then we also have introduction of resolution number 3830. This is a resolution specifying the dollar and percentage change in the regular property levy from the previous year per RCW 84.55.120, providing for an increase of the levy from $86,664,580 to $88,389,944.
Commissioners, we are pleased to introduce the 2025 Port of Seattle budget and the 5-year capital plan today. As we often say, budget are more than dollars and cents. The budget conveys our vision and our values. Both come to life throughout this presentation and in the tangible work that follows. Commissioners, we are well positioned in 2025, backed by a record-breaking demand for our essential services, the strength of our diversified business lines, and major capital investments that deliver economic activity in our community and new revenue to the port. We leverage all of this strength to promote economic opportunities and the quality of life in the region by advancing trade, travel, commerce, and job creation in an equitable, accountable, and environmentally responsible manner. Despite the positive indicators for 2025, you'll always hear me stress that the port's resilience and its ability to do big things lies in finding the right balance between transformative investments and careful management of expenses, especially when there are continued uncertainties at the national and international levels. The budget we bring to you today meets this standard. It is important to stress that this budget is achievable because we have strong demand. We can afford the projects we are committed to today. All of these conditions are dynamic, so we will watch closely the direct potential risks related to policy changes, potential for reduced federal investment in our industries and port, and geopolitical events. Throughout the presentation, we are prepared to identify some areas where we see potential risk for future federal funding, which has been valuable for infrastructure, efficient operations, economic development, and investments in environmental sustainability and decarbonization. I have one more point that I'd like to make before I turn this presentation over to the finance team. You will see in this presentation that we will continue to make substantial investments in our well-trained and highly motivated staff. Their commitment and innovation are always on display, but has never been more evident as when the port faced several challenges in 2024. We're grateful for our port employees, and we continue to make investments to keep the port a competitive and equitable employer to attract and retain the best talent. I would like to thank each of our members of our team, as well as you, for all your valuable input and feedback, Commissioners, that you've provided for this 2025 budget in the past few months that we began, seems like just the other day, which was probably April, I think, when we started to talk about these events. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters, which will be our Chief Financial Officer, Dan Thomas, and Michael Tong, Director of Corporate Budget Finance. And I think we have other folks available as well.
We do.
I'm
We
looking
have
over
some
here.
online.
I see some online. We'll introduce
whole
them as
cast
they
of
come.
characters.
We have a cast of characters to talk about our, because we touch everything across the program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dan, to kick us off.
Yes, thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, Commissioners. And could we move to slide 3, please? So we are pleased to be here for introduction of the 2025 budget. As Steve mentioned, it's been a long process beginning back in the spring. We did provide briefings to the Commission back in September. We briefed you on the central services budget in September and then the operating budgets in October. And as Steve mentioned earlier, also the tax levy and plan of finance were briefed to the Commission in October. The preliminary budget document, you should have copies of that. They were handed out in October and they're also provided to the public. Today, there is a long PowerPoint slide deck accompanying today's presentation. We are not going to walk through all these slides because most of this is information you've already seen. We will, however, highlight any changes that have been made since you last reviewed the budget, and we will highlight a few other things, but we're not going to walk through. We're going to fly pretty high today. But as usual, we have a lot of additional details in the appendix of this presentation in case you want to look at any more details. So with that, we're going to move on to the next slide, and we're going to highlight the changes to the aviation division budget. I'm going to turn it over to Heidi Popachok. Heidi, you there?
Yes, Dan, thank you. Good afternoon, Commission, President Mohammed, Commissioners, and Executive Director Metric. As Dan mentioned, I'll just walk through a high-level summary of the budget changes for the aviation division since our October 8th briefing to the Commission. So aviation division revenue had a net decrease of $2.1 million. For the aeronautical revenues, it decreased $4.5 million as a result of us being able to utilize our reallocation process. Due to the cyber outage, we were utilizing a manual process, and since we had some restoration to some of our financial system, we were able to do a reallocation, refresh of our allocation process. So you'll see mostly throughout the aviation changes as a result of that refresh. Looking at our non-aeronautical revenue, it had a net increase of $6.7 million, primarily including our revenue projection for the Sea-Tac office center agreement. So you may recall back on October 22nd that the Commission authorized the approval for $122 million purchase and sale agreement for the 3 buildings at the Sea-Tac Office Center. This change includes the revenue associated with that. And then secondly, we have an increase in extended hours of our clubs and lounges. We included that. And then some additional reductions associated with our public parking rate increase. As you may recall, we're going to consider a rate increase for our public parking at a later date. And then there are some additional changes associated with our other lines of business for non-aero related to employee parking expansion and then ground transportation and others. Next slide, please. So looking on the aviation operating expenses side, we had a net decrease of $9.2 million. Primarily, we were able to capitalize a little over $6 million associated with the leases with Master Park. On October 22nd, the Commission authorized 3 lot leases for the airport to utilize. And so as part of our accounting standards, we were able to capitalize that. Secondly is the 2.8 million reduction associated with our stock third-party property management fee. We have a different, have a new assumption date, start date of that. And so we saw a 2.8 million reduction there, and then some modest changes below there. Next slide, please. And then lastly, looking at the depreciation expense, we had a net increase. This is just our accounting estimate of the entries to move the leases that we have to be capitalized. So it's more of a technical entry change. Just wanted to highlight there for commissioners today. And that concludes the aviation division changes since the October 8th briefing we had before you.
Okay, next slide, please. On the non-aviation side of the house, very little change there. For the Maritime Division, the cruise, we added about $326,000 of additional expense, and that's for the Customs and Border Protection. That's a reimbursement agreement out at Terminal 91 to provide for their upgraded systems, IT systems for their customs processing. And then the only other change was actually just a transfer of the iBest pilot program into the Workforce Development Department within OEDI. So those are the only changes for non-aviation. Next slide, please. So looking at the total port roll-up of revenues and expenses, I'll just call your attention to the 2025 proposed budget column. We're looking at total revenues of a little over $1.1 billion, up 9.4%. That is a record revenue, again, for the Port of Seattle year over year. And then also record net operating income of $441 million, up 8.8%, another record year for the Port of Seattle. So very strong performance. Next slide, please. Just to highlight a couple of the key budget drivers for the year. Again, we had discussed these with you in previous presentations. On the payroll side, we're looking at a 5% average pay increase for non-represented employees, and that will be the combination of COLA, cost of living increases, and plus merit. We don't exactly know how that will be split up. We don't know. We don't have the COLA numbers yet. They won't be available till early next year. So HR will be working on figuring out which portion of that will be COLA versus merit early in the year. And then wage increases for representative groups will be based on the actual contracts for each of those bargaining groups. As you know, HR is putting in place the final component of the new pay program, the equity pay adjustments they're working through right now. So we have put in an assumption for that for next year, and that amounts to about $4.6 million port-wide to account for those equity pay adjustments. That's built into the 2025 budget. So those are some of the key assumptions. Also, we're assuming a 5% vacancy factor for next year. Next slide, please. As you know, part of our process is incorporating commission budget priorities into the budget, working through commission requests and evaluations by staff. We've got a number of slides that go through these. I'm not going to go through each one, but I'll just kind of pause for each of these slides so you can take a look at them just to, as a reminder. I know that Executive Director Metric provided a memo back in October that walked through commission priorities and where they were incorporated either in division budgets already or where they were explicitly funded as part of the 2025 budget. So we can just kind of slowly walk through these for your benefit. Next slide, please. If you have any questions as we're going through this, please stop us. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. next slide. Now, here's something new. As we go through our budget presentations, we go through each of the divisions and central services, and one of the things in the past that has been requested of us, because the environmental sustainability is such an important priority for the port, but the environmental initiatives are spread throughout the different pockets of the port. They're in different departments, they're in different divisions, they're in the capital program, they're in the environmental remediation, and it's been pointed out that it's difficult to really get a good sense of how they stack up port-wide. So we asked the environmental team to take a look at it, put a few slides together to give you more of a cross-cutting port-wide look at all of the environmental initiatives across the port. So we've asked Sarah, the two Sarahs here, Sarah Ogier and Sarah Cox, and they're going to walk through a couple of slides to give you a better sense of port-wide environmental priorities and initiatives. So I'll turn it over to the
Sure. Thank
two
you, Dan.
Sarahs.
Can you hear me? Okay. And I want to also it's Sarah J., Director of Maritime Environment Sustainability. And Dan, I really appreciate what you just mentioned about how it is so port-wide, this effort. We have individual orgs, and you'll see some of those numbers, but really this effort is across the board, and I really applaud the collective effort that it takes across the board in the organization to deploy these environmental priorities. So good afternoon, Commissioners and Executive Metric. Today we're excited to share a summary of environmental spending for 2025 that we're proposing. As you recall, last year during the budget review, we were asked if we could present a roll-up of environmental spending, and so we're coming back to you as you consider the 2025 proposal. Again, this is a high-level overview and a roll-up, so you won't see all of the programs referenced. But this year, we are prioritizing several key initiatives, and I think I saw some of them already in the slides you just saw on commission priorities, but I will talk to a few of these. Community engagement and environmental justice, I just wanted to introduce overall with that context. We continue to work in that realm and continue our investments on that. It's more specifically, activities that we're focusing on in the environmental services, we remain committed to reducing emissions from our maritime and aviation sectors. And some priorities around that decarbonization effort this year will be continuing progress on our green corridor, exploring clean fuel opportunities for maritime and aviation through collaboration with industry and research, increasing our efforts on education, outreach, and coalition building on securing effective policies, and exploring more port-to-port cooperation and knowledge sharing regarding decarbonization. We'll also plan to host a clean fuel summit with a range of stakeholders. Additional items here, we'll continue our investment in the SAMP and proceed with both the NEPA EA process and the SEPA process. We'll continue our environmental permitting support for our ambitious capital programs. We'll address stormwater and wastewater management challenges, ensuring the long-term health of our environment and that we're meeting all of our permits and rehabilitating and updating our systems. The Part 150 study and sound insulation repair pilot program will help mitigate noise pollution and improve quality of life for residents. We'll invest in habitat restoration, monitoring, and kelp restoration to protect our marine ecosystems. We hope to progress on the East Waterway cleanup efforts and other remediation projects to address legacy contamination and clean up our lands. We'll continue our efforts to reduce waste and promote sustainable practices, and we'll provide support for transition away from PFAS and towards safer alternatives. And Sarah's going to share some of the numbers. The other Sarah.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Sarah Cox, the Director of Aviation Environment Sustainability. And as you can see here, this slide is really a roll-up of the full Environment and Sustainability Center expertise, so including both aviation and maritime. The 2025 proposed budget is almost $23 million, and we categorize it into 5 categories: climate and sustainability, permitting, compliance, and habitat, stormwater, maritime remediation, and aviation noise. And our largest budget allocation is dedicated to permitting, compliance, and habitat restoration. This reflects our commitment to meeting all state and federal regulations, supporting the health of our land and water, and exceeding compliance standards. Closely following is our sustainability and climate work with a combined investment of $5.2 million across the maritime and aviation programs. Please note that this summary does not include our capital project spending related to sustainability or operating costs from other departments. And these expenses will summarize on the next slide. Next slide, please. And I just, as Sarah noted, it takes the collaboration and partnership of many departments in our organization, including our respective maintenance partners, utilities and infrastructure, our capital development program, and many more. And you can kind of see that snapshot here. So we are spending over $60 million in our other departments. That's integrated throughout our operation and capital programs. And this slide shares some of the larger and more notable of those proposed programs in 2025. So in our capital projects, some significant investments include our sound insulation program for our apartments and places of worship, as well as a sound insulation repair and replacement pilot program, our capital projects for LED lighting, and then various departments contribute to our environmental efforts through their operational budgets. For instance, to meet our emissions reduction goals, we purchase renewable natural gas for our maritime and aviation buildings. This cost differential between fossil natural gas and RNG is $2.6 million. And we also have a $1 million investment in studying the replacement of the airport central mechanical system to improving our energy efficiency as well as reducing our emissions. And I'll now hand it over to Sarah to talk through some of the maritime items.
Thanks, Sarah. So let's see, additional items that are happening outside of our own departments. The shoreline restoration work, including projects in our capital program such as Centennial Park and T5 Southeast. We're budgeting $940,000 for that, and that will help restore and protect our coastal ecosystems. And of course, we have our environmental remediation liabilities program budget totaling $19,700,000, which was approved on consent earlier this year. Just today, earlier in this meeting. And also, we're anticipating $560,000 in grants to communities, which you'll also see here in the slides that Michael and Dan are sharing. And in addition, employees in finance, legal, external relations, OEDI, and other teams contribute significantly to our environmental programs. So that's, again, we're really happy to be able to share this with you and for you to be able to look a little more holistically at the environmental spending that your organization is taking on. And with that, we conclude our remarks. I'll hand it back over to Michael, I believe.
Yeah, I'll just conclude by saying hopefully that gives you a better port-wide, clearer view, because it doesn't come out with the normal way we present our budgets, division by division. It doesn't really give you this kind of a view, so hopefully this is helpful for you.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful for the public to also see this breakdown, so thank you for taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn over to Michael.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, Commissioners and
Next slide.
Executive Director Metric. So here's a list of the community program that you are very familiar with. We are proposing to invest over $20 million in 16 community programs in 2025 to support the equitable economic development opportunity, health, community, and environments, as well as the workforce for our region. Next slide, please. These charts on the left show the budget amount and the percentage for each category of the community program. On the right-hand side is a list of the community programs and its budget amount. What's new here is the $750,000 for fence or waterfront, which is the second last bullet under equity, diversity, and inclusion. The other key changes that I want to highlight is the $311,000 for additional staff to support the additional staff support and PCAT compensation for the Duwamish Valley Community Program. You can also see all the detail of the items in the appendix in slide 25. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of the 2025 to 2029 CIP. The port is planning to invest 1.2 billion in 2025 and 5.6 billion for the next 5 years to create a port for the future and to improve our gateways to better serve our vision. Next slide, please. The port expect to the total sources of funds will be over 2.2 billion in 2025. 47% of the funding sources comes from operating revenues. That's not including the Seaport Alliance revenue, which is so a few line below that, a few row below that in terms of cash flow there from the Seaport Alliance. And about 1/3 of the funding sources comes from our bond proceeds. And the tax levy makes up about 3.9% of the total in 2025. Next slide, please. The parties expects the uses of fund will be over 2.4 billion in 2025. The two biggest expenditure are on capital project and operation. Almost half of the total funds is on capital project, and about 28% of the total is on the operating expenses. Next slide, please. So you've been briefed on the draft plan of finance and tax levy in the last commission meeting in October. I would like to just remind you that the levy amount is approved annually by the commission, by you. And while the tax levy make up only 3.9% of the total sources of fund in 2025, it is important to point out that levy can be leveraged by issuing a GO bond. So we can see, the overall impact is much higher than, the number that's so in terms of the levy amount. The maximum allowable levy amount is 118 million in 2025, and our proposed amount is 88.4 million for 2025. Next slide, please. The port is proposing the levy increase by 2% in 2025. And the preliminary assessed value for 2025 increased by 2.9% to 857 billion for the county. Thus, both the millage rate and the median taxpayers increase will reduce slightly for next year. It's also important to point out that the port levy is approximately just 1.1% of the total property taxes levied in the King County this year in 2024. Next slide, please. This chart shows the tax levy and millage rate from 2019 to 2025. I would like to point out a couple of observations for you here. First, the port have lower tax levy or cap at fact for about 10 years, from 2009 to 2018. And starting from 2019, we've been making a very moderate increase to preserve some purchasing power. As we all know, the inflation has been pretty high in the past few years, especially in the area of construction for our capital projects. Second, the millage rates have been trending down since 2013, and so it's more than 10 years. We see the pretty positive trends for the past 12, 13 years. Next slide, please. As for the remaining budget calendar for this year, we'll come back to you for the adoption of the budget next Tuesday, and then we'll file the statutory budget with the county by November 17, and then we'll finish the final budget document and release to public on or before December 5th. Next slide, please.
So with that, Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
you
so-
had more. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so last year, if you remember, you direct us to review the actual equity spending starting from 2019 and report on the equity spending as part of the annual budget process going forward. So I will provide you a quick summary on the equity spending for 2025 in the next few slides. Next slide, please. The chart shows the port-wide equity spending since 2019. As you can see, it is quite a positive trend, and we are planning to spend over $26 million in 2025, almost 3 times the amount that we spent in 2019. Next slide, please. This chart shows the equity spending as a percentage of total operating expenses. The percentage we plan to spend for 2025 is 3.8%, which is higher than any of the prior years that we spent on equity. The second point I want to make is that you may be curious to see the drop in 2022 actual compared to the 2021 actual. The reason is because of the delay in implementing the Youth Maritime Career Launch Program, which previously known as the Opportunity Youth Initiative. That's the reason for the drop there in 2022. Next slide, please. So here's a summary of the 2025 port-wide equity spending by category. The green line represents the 2025 budget, and the blue represent the 2024 budget. The 2 biggest categories are removing system barriers and community investments. And you can see all the detailed item in the appendix in slide 42 to 45. Next slide, please. Last but not least is a summary of the percentage of port-wide equity spending funded by tax levy. The percentage funded by levy have been going down from about 40% in 2020 to about 32% for 2025. So in a way, it's good that we can use more other funding to cover that. With that concludes our presentation. I would be happy to answer any further questions that you may have. But before turning that to the public hearing, I do want to point out there's a couple of changes to the dates listed in the budget resolution 3829, which is the second paragraph on the second page of the budget resolution towards the end in the fourth row there. Based on the advice from our legal team, we changed the publication date for the public notice of the hearing today from October 30th for the first public hearing, public notice, as well as the November 6th for the second public notice to the 31st of October and 7th of November. So it's one day, later than what we put it out in the material. The reason is that they try to meet the legal requirement for both the introduction of the budget today as well as for the the adoption of the budget meeting next Tuesday. So technically it's both okay, but we just want to be very abundant caution and make the changes there so to meet both the budget meeting dates. And so there's one day delay. We will make the changes in the material for you for the adoption of the budget next week.
So the resolution will have, those dates will be changed for the final passage, adoption.
So with that, happy to answer any further questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Dan. And thank you to both of the Sarahs for the presentation today. I will now open it up for commission comments, but also we will hold time part of this process and do a public hearing, an official public hearing process. Is there any questions from my colleagues at this time? Yes, Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you, Michael, and really thank you so much for the continued improvement of the budget in brief. I know this is an evolution, and it's really quite a good one, and thank you, Executive Metric, the iterative process, the way we get commission initiatives into the budget incorporated. I think this has been a very positive evolution, and I think it serves everybody's interest very well. I had just a couple of points. I've always had this great desire to see sustainable aviation fuels continue to. It's one of the few ways we can address aviation emissions. And I saw that we had like in the slide thing, we had like a SAF incentive purchase program that was, we talked about doing it previously, and then on slide 35, there's no budget for it. So it's in the budget in brief, but it's not in your slides. And I don't know, where were we at with this purchase of attributes?
Sarah Cox, welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman, that's something that we are currently working through logistics, and so that's currently on hold right now. But it's something that we're continuing to pursue, and just with our pursuit to bringing SAF to SEA, we are continuing our advocacy efforts, engaged with the industry on what it's going to take to bring it here, as well. We submitted a grant for the Fast SAF grant. We were not a recipient, but after looking at who received those grants in our area, it's very positive. It was a combination of infrastructure support, evaluating potential siting. So a lot of things are moving in our state, and we're continuing to advocate for that as well.
Because I saw like there's like $300,000 towards like low carbon fuel standard. That was another line item that I know we had passed the low carbon fuel standard. So I don't know what is that. Because I also know that we're not doing this responsible traveler program revisit where the Alaska Airlines Choose effort was a way to buy down SAF. I'm just trying to, we had $1 million fund when we first created the Energy and Sustainability Committee, looking how much can we continue to do this, and I just sort of don't see anything really specific on our pathway here, so I'm asking you to inform us.
Thank you. So with respect to the Good Traveler Program and Alaska's Choose program, the Good Traveler Program is looking at opportunities. They're kind of reevaluating the program right now, and we are a member of that and are contributing to that. So we are evaluating what that looks like, what our partnership looks like in that, as well as potentially exploring, other elements, whether it be Choose or what some of the other programs that some of the airlines have developed as well. And with respect to, we had, I think the big thing, the $1 million spread out over 3 years, a lot of that focus has been on ground transportation and looking at how we can reduce the emissions associated with ground transportation to all of our facilities. That work will be completed this year, and then that program was extended in 2020 for another 3 years, and that's what that $350,000 is for. And some of the specifics in that are continuing to be towards ground transportation, as well as advocacy support with our external relations team. And so we'll be presenting kind of that outline of what those programs look like, because part of it was pending the approval of the funding for this next year.
And more real quick on the PCR,
yes.
What are we doing? I know we were studying it. Yeah. What are we doing now?
Yeah, so we are implementing, so PC Air is our preconditioned air system at the airport, and we are implementing elements of the study Some of it is repairs to some of the fan systems. There's quite a few different elements. So some of it is physical repairs and infrastructure to the system. The other part is our assessment to determine how airlines are using the PCR system. So we're piloting with ICT an AI sound detection system to determine usage and why or why not airlines are using the system, as well as how quickly they're connecting to it. So there are quite a few elements of that that are in the expense budget, and then there will also be a capital project introduced for that support.
All right, that'll cover, but you realize that our major Scope 3 emissions are at the airport, so these initiatives, I think it's important that we have full awareness. So thank you for that.
Those were good questions. And then just a quick follow-up to Commissioner Fellman's question about the PCR. Are we sharing those costs with the airlines? I know.
Well, it's kind of sometimes indirectly, yes, but Alaska Airlines, Southwest American have all done some site improvements. Alaska has implemented, like, for example, testing some different hose types, some elbows on the hoses, because if it gets kinked, it's not flowing as it should into the aircraft. So we're in partnership with the airlines on what the improvements look like. We're actually was talking to them last week about this. So
Great. I hope they welcome your recommendations and
yeah,
make the
they've
appropriate
been a
investments.
partner in what the recommendations also need to be as well.
Great.
One non-environmental question, but I can let others go first.
Yeah, and then circle back. Commissioner Cho or Culkins, this is our 6th briefing, so I totally understand if you guys don't have questions.
Yeah, no, I just want to once again reiterate my appreciation for the roll-up that we got on all these initiatives, and just to Steve in particular for continuing to improve through slow refinement and evolution, the process that we've undertaken as a commission and executive leadership team to produce this document each year. I think it's the fact that at this point in the process we are kind of out of questions because we've had months to deliberate over them is an indication of how well this process is working. So thank you, Stephen, and others.
Any additional questions? Do we have Commissioner Hasagawa online? Just want to hold space.
None from me, thank you.
Great. Commissioner Fellman.
So one of the things that we were talking about early on was the tracking the KPIs, right? And so I dug out this old document we had, well, back in January 2024, the beginning of this year, we had the Century Agenda Overview and the 2023 Annual Review of KPIs. And then, we had, 2021, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and so in gray. And so I'm just wondering, did we do the same thing going into 24 and 25 in terms of just tracking how our KPIs with the Century Agenda?
Mr. Metrick?
Yeah, Commissioner, I believe that's the report that we're doing quarterly on our progress on our, it goes through the executive director priorities that are in line with yours, of everything lines up. We provided a half-year report on that, and then we'll provide, end of the year, we'll provide that updated information on the progress across all those KPIs.
End of the year, perfect. All right,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great. Hearing no further questions from my colleagues, I just want to thank you all again for this presentation. It is the 6th briefing we have received thus far, and we know that our budget is probably the most important document item that we pass each year. It reflects our values as a commission and as an organization. And so again, I just want to say thank you for providing that presentation today. Hearing no further questions from staff, the public hearing is now open. Speakers will have 2 minutes each to present their testimonies. Clerk Hart, do we have any signups for the public hearing at this time?
We have had no one sign up for the public hearing.
Very good. Is there anyone who did not sign up for the public hearing who wishes to present any testimonies at this time? If so, please come forward and state your name. Okay, my colleagues are asking, maybe Clerk Hart, could you share the date that moved for the public hearing or the passage of the budget?
It was the publication date.
Yes, so thank you. Through Commission President Mohammed to Commissioner Felleman, there was actually a change in the legal notice, and it was just a change of one date there's two legal notices that go out. Your resolution said that there was a legal notice that published on October 30th and another on November 6th. When they ultimately published, they were a day different than what's reflected in the resolution. So they published on the 31st of October and then on November 7th. So nothing for you to do here today. That's a technical scrivener's error as far as I'm concerned. So we'll correct that when the next version comes back for adoption.
Great. Thanks for sharing that information and providing that clarification. So not seeing anyone else present to provide any testimonies, we will now close the public hearing and move discussion to commission. Commissioners, is there a motion to introduce Resolution 3829 and Resolution 3830?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. One last time, is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, Clerk Hart, please call the roll for the vote. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your names are called.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
Very good. The motion passes. Resolution 3829 and 3830 are introduced and will be back before the commission for consideration of adoption at the November 19, 2024 meeting. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clerk Hart, please read the next item into the record, and then Executive Director Metrick will introduce the item.
Thank you. This is Agenda Item 10B, authorization for the Executive Director to set 2025 marine stormwater utility rates with an 8% increase from 2024.
Commissioners, this item is an update on our stormwater utility work as well as a 2025 rate approval request. The marine stormwater utility was established by Commission Charter in 2014 to fund stormwater services, facility systems, and programs including pollution control and treatment of stormwater discharges. To ensure value to our customers and the broader community along the Duwamish and Elliott Bay, the utility has driven innovative stormwater treatment, including green infrastructure, and installed systems voluntarily on port properties. For 2025, staff recommends a rate increase of 8%, which will help the port exceed stormwater regulatory requirements and ensure funding of critical capital investments to meet Century Agenda goals. And our presenters this afternoon are Sarah Auger, Director of Maritime Environment Sustainability, Jane Duell, Senior Manager, Environmental Programs, Stormwater Utility Administration, and in Stormwater Utility Administration also is Andre Skilinar, Environmental Program Manager. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. There we go. Good afternoon again for the record. Sarah Auger, Director of Maritime Environment Sustainability. Pleasure to be with you today again. And we're going to talk about our stormwater utility rate and moving forward for 2025. As our Executive Director mentioned, we are looking at a rate increase of 8% for 2025. And this recommendation has been guided by input from our advisory committee, which includes Port and Northwest Seaport Alliance operations and finance leaders. The rate will help the port to exceed stormwater regulatory requirements and ensure funding of critical capital investments to meet our Century Agenda goals, which we were just talking about. The criteria, I want to move ahead to the next slide, actually, I think. So I wanted to talk to this criteria, which is on the slide. These are the criteria we use to look at the variety of rate options. Criteria include maintaining a 6-month fund reserve and a consistent and predictable rate over the 5-year planning horizon. I want to emphasize also that what we're proposing today is in line and consistent with the plan, the 5-year plan we presented to you last year. So we're happy to be able to keep on track with that. So that's my introductory remarks. I'm going to hand it over to Jane Dool to provide a more detailed presentation on the topic.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And good afternoon, Commissioners and Executive Director Metric. The next slide, please. This shows our operating budget for the stormwater utility. It's our estimated budget for 2025, and it includes the maritime budget that was presented back in October. With the 8% approved rate increase, we would be reaching $8.3 million in income. Our expenses are estimated at about $9.8 million, which would cover our required regulatory, enhanced water quality services, and our core infrastructure work. There's an additional $2.7 million in our capital plan for this year, which is part of our 5- and 10-year long-term planning. Because the utility operates on a cost recovery model, with rates set to recover costs of operations, underspending over the last few years has added nearly $5 million to our utility cash balance. Our O&M reserve is $4.1 million for 2025, so that's the 6-month reserve that was mentioned. So therefore, we can exceed the income with our expenses this year because we have $5 million cushion to use. Next slide, please. I wanted to highlight some of our accomplishments in 2024. The slide shows them in detail, and then I want to just highlight, next year we'll come to the end of our first 5-year strategic plan, which we developed early on in the utility. So we are now looking at a new 5-year strategic plan and have been done work on that. That's involved in including about 40 people from our port and our alliance, and also tenants in surveys and direct meetings to get input from our stakeholders. It's being managed by a strategic planning consultant. That's one of the things that we're spending time on this year and next. Another task that we've been working on is getting our GIS asset mapping, which is a critical part of understanding and planning for our assets, updated to the next generation of ArcGIS. So that's in the works. That map is used extensively by our capital planning and other folks, and it helps us track our progress of the goal of 75% of our system rehabilitation by 2030. Another highlight is that we translated some of our best management practices materials into non-English for truckers and others in the community where English is not their primary language, and that's something that we have posted on our external website when it's working. And then we also have our marine maintenance team, which accomplishes about 1,300 projects in any given year. Some of that work includes pipe repairs at Terminal 46, and Terminal 18 in coordination with the Northwest Seaport Alliance and SSA Marine, and also a pipe repair associated with the Fisherman's Terminal Maritime Innovation Center project that was identified as an asset that needed repair and that building will be connecting to. I also want to just note that we have a lot of coordination with our waterfront project management, port construction services, environmental permitting, engineering, and marine maintenance to support all the work we do. And we also do targeted training on stormwater regulations and spill response with these teams. Next slide, please. So this shows the annual rates with an 8% increase approved. The ports rate scheme is in the middle column. The City of Seattle, as a point of comparison, is in the left column, and the percent difference, which is basically increase of the city's rates over the ports, is shown in the far right column. So this would be our proposed rate structure under an approved 8% increase. Our rates have been tracking 8%, as I mentioned and Sarah mentioned earlier. And so this is what the tenants and our operations and Northwest Seaport Alliance would be seeing in January 2025 if this rate increase is approved. And note that these amounts are per 1,000 square feet of area. That concludes this presentation. If there's any questions.
Thank you for the presentation and for the information. Are there any questions for staff at this time from commissioners? Commissioner Calkins.
Thank you, Jane. There's a number of changes being proposed or in the process of being updated around stormwater regulations in the state of Washington. Would the enactment of any of those changes create a significant increase in the costs of this program generally?
Yes, thank you. I think you're referring to the industrial stormwater general permit that the state of Washington will be adopting January 1st of this coming year. I am not able to answer that at this point. We are going to be evaluating that in the next year. And according to what we understand from Department of Ecology, properties that are currently managed under the municipal permit that could possibly be pulled under the industrial permit, Port of Seattle and also Northwest Seaport Alliance, will have about a year before we have to submit notices of intent for those. So we will be evaluating the consequences to our stormwater program and also to the stormwater utility. And I hope to have answers to your question sometime before the middle of next year, because we're certainly going to need to consider that and how both policies, whether we have policy changes for our utility and also program costs and additional staff. Yeah.
Sarah, did you want to add something?
I wanted to also include, thank you, Jane, but the budget proposal that you've just had introduced includes some targeted funding specifically to investigate how this significant change in the industrial stormwater permit may affect our properties. So we'll be investigating that in 2025 as well. And so I expect to be able to report back more, as Jane is saying, but I wanted to flag for you that we are investing in that because there's a lot to evaluate about the implications. So.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Any additional questions? All right, hearing no further questions for this item, is there a motion and a second to approve item 10B?
So moved. Second.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioners, is there any additional discussion on this item? Hearing none, Clerk Hart, please call the roll for the vote. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your names are called.
Thank you, beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Felleman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa, if you're still on. Commissioner Hasagawa? I think she's probably dropped.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. 4 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
Very good, the motion passes. Great. Clerk Hart, please read the next item into the record, and then Executive Director Metric will introduce the item.
Thank you. This is Agenda Item 10C, Introduction of Resolution Number 3831, a resolution amending the policy directive for salaries and benefits for employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement established by Resolution Number 3823, and providing an effective date for all amendments as of January 1, 2025.
Commissioners, the Salary and Benefits Resolution establishes pay ranges and grades for non-represented employees at the port. The introduction will cover the changes needed this coming year in 2025. We will also cover the updates related to the multi-year compensation program per your request in June. This includes the pay placement methodology and the related policy changes. As we have shared, this new compensation program offers increased transparency and consistency in how salaries are established for non-represented employees at the port, as well as new hires. I want to thank the Commission for your interest in staying involved in this process and for your support you continue to show for our human resources team as they modernize the port's compensation program. I believe these efforts will assist in making the port a continued employer of choice in the region. Senior Director for Human Resources, Katie Gerard, is here to answer any questions you may have. Along with her is Keisha Reichstein, Director of Total Rewards from HR as well. So, Katie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about this year's salary and benefits resolution. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to start off with a background of this salary and benefits process, talk about those changes that we are recommending for 2025, and then, as Steve mentioned, go over the compensation project that we're ready to implement in the next phase. Next slide, please. So the salary and benefits resolution is the Port's Commission's authorization to revise pay and benefit programs for our port employees. It is required under RCW 5308.170. Next slide, please. So we do have some recommended changes. The main change that we bring forward every year is an adjustment to our salary structures. So this year, the non-represented and executive graded salary range structures, we are recommending an increase of 3.85 to each of those salary structures. We're also changing just the way it shows up in our documentation. Normally, we have included the midpoint, which was in prior iterations of the salary structure was a reference to the market reference point. We have now moved that, so you'll see in the next couple of slides that we are no longer identifying the midpoint, but we are identifying the market reference point, which is currently set at the 25th percentile of each of those salary grades. Next slide, please. So if you can see here, we provide both the hourly and the annual rates. I do want to note, while we do regular money descriptions in our HCM system, we actually have a much finer level of detail. So this is what we provide publicly, and again, that market reference point for each of the hourly and the annual points is the market reference point that we have identified for each of those grades. And then the next slide just shows the separate schedule that we developed in June of this year for our executive team members. Next slide, please. There was a provision previously in the salary and benefits resolution for employees that resided outside of Washington State and were not eligible for PERS retirement. We no longer have employees outside of the state, so we are recommending removal of this section in the ports policy. We did make changes to our HR 8 policy, which is our talent acquisition, which requires people be residents of the state of Washington for employment at the port. Next slide. We've also made some updates to our definitions. So seasonal employee previously was defined as a time of employment of 6 months or less. We are now changing that to 9 months. Some of our seasonal employees have needed to stay on longer than 6 months, so we're making a technical correction to how we define seasonal employee. We're also updating the pay equity definition. There are certain things related to Washington state law, and it's more broad in that it will say that similar work being performed by the employees can be explained by bona fide job-related factors that are consistent with business necessity. So it's a broader statement than what we have had in the past, but it does align with Washington state law. And then finally, we're adding a new definition for similar work experience, because that is one of those bona fide job-related factors that we are using in setting pay, and so we have provided a definition for similar work. Next slide, please. So when we make these changes and we increase the range for each of our salary grades, there typically tends to be a few employees that fall below the new minimum of the range. And so we call that our raise to minimum process. We have identified 119 employees as of today's information, and we estimate that to cost us $358,000. However, we do want to note that with the implementation of our new pay placement methodology, we do anticipate that employees will move above the minimum of the range, so we do expect this amount to go down, but wanted to provide you the detail as it exists today prior to any adjustments. Next slide, please. So that really covers what we're recommending in relation to change in the salary and benefits resolution itself. And now I want to move on to responding to the order that was passed in June that asked us to come back and brief you on the compensation broadcast. I do want to note we have just made some of these policy decisions, and we did share those decisions with our employees just last week. We held a quarterly HR broadcast where we identified the changes that we are planning to move forward with. So in the way of background, next slide, please. I want to talk about this comp project. It's been a multi-year project. We really identified our core principles of equity, transparency, and simplicity. And then the wheel on the right, you can see just the different areas where we develop different design teams, because this is a complete overhaul of how we do compensation for our non-represented employees. The bullets on the left really talks about what we have accomplished to date. So we have standardized all job descriptions. That means all non-represented employees have a new description that reflect the work that they're performing today. As a part of that, we also created additional job matrices, which can kind of be called also a career path. Like if there's a project manager 1, 2, 3, 4, that is a career path that someone can build a career here at the port. So we've developed several more job matrices for employees in different career fields. We have also updated the market value for each of our jobs using new tools. We have been working with our outside partners, Compensation Connections, to really figure out what is the latest information and what is the best way to move forward in identifying the market rate for each of our jobs. And so that work has been done as well. As you know, in June, you all passed the new salary range structure, so we have that in place now. And then in 2023, we did add the COLA and the COLA Plus as a separate way to increase salaries for non-represented employees. That's something that's been in place for 2 years now, and those increases take effect on February 1st of each year. The data that we utilize, the CPI, is something that we look at, and we won't have the final numbers to determine what our COLA for 2025 will be just yet, but that will be announced as soon as we have that information. We also went through the process of removing education requirements for most of our job descriptions, as you indicated there, or as you requested in your order to do that, remove that paper ceiling. So we've done that in most cases. We also asked all of our employees to share their work history summaries with us so that we could assess their similar work experience in anticipation of the pay placement model. Throughout this, I am very confident that we have been as transparent as we can possibly be, and I feel really good about what we have created and what we're building for the future of this organization and how we compensate employees. Next slide, please. We wanted to just give you a snapshot of the employee engagement that has happened throughout the project. We've held monthly comp chats, we've had broadcasts, there's been a ton of information, probably information overload on both emails and our Compass sites. We've held multiple trainings, presentations at different team meetings, manager moment emails to really help managers understand how to communicate compensation with employees, and then, of course, individual meetings with employees and their supervisors as we have gone through the work experience analysis. We've also included a variety of people, and I really want to just take a moment to thank all of our managers, all of our employees, all of the people that have offered their time and expertise through sounding boards and feedback groups and responding to surveys to help us design something that will help us all be a competitive employer into the future. So I just really want to take a moment to thank all the time and energy that has gone into this project. Next slide, please. All right, so we have developed a new pay placement formula that will determine the place and range for current employees and will establish a new and consistent process as new employees join our organization. We are utilizing factors of similar experience as well as job performance for those that have been at the port for up to 3 of their last job performance scores. We are looking at pay adjustments for current employees that are below their expected place and range, and those salary adjustments will be effective on June 16th, the date that the new salary structure was adopted. The HR 21 policies will covering things like the new hire offers, promotions, as well as COLA and pay for performance annual increase programs. One of the key things that we really want to just highlight as I think a really great important step in equity for our organization is that for new hires, our new policy will eliminate negotiations, where I think in our history and what has been documented in many studies, that negotiations really do set up the challenges that then create pay equity problems. By eliminating negotiations and really utilizing the same consistent process for all employees joining our organization, we just feel like we're going to be able to really defend and have a good, solid program that is going to result in good pay equity outcomes for our organization. So really excited about this. It's also a big change, and we realize that. So I think we wanted to signal to the public that, if you come to work at the Port of Seattle, we're going to look at what your experience is, what you bring to the table, and we're going to set your salary accordingly to the formula that we've used for all of our current employees. So that is our plan going forward, and we're really excited to see how this works for our organization. Next slide, please. All right, so as I said, we just held an HR broadcast on November 6th to go over the review of the proposed policy changes. We also shared that we were recommending a 3.85% increase to the salary ranges. We do hope, with a little bit of luck, by end of November, possibly early December, to be able to give the final results for each employee and what their expected place and range is. We, throughout this process, have been using a Power App, and we do plan to use that as our way to communicate back to employees. We will hold another comp chat on December 4th. We know there's going to be questions and there's going to be interest in talking through individual results, so we will make sure that we are available throughout the month of December. As you know, with the cyber attack, we have had some challenges with our HCM system. Happy to report we are back utilizing and processing payroll in HCM, and so we do have a lot of reconciliation to do, and so that work is starting now. We've just started communicating that with our employees, so we are hoping that we can start to get some of these adjustments added into the system by the end of the year. But we do anticipate that the retroactive adjustments and the pay that will result from that won't be available until January of 2025. All right. I think that's my last slide. I will certainly open it up for questions, but I also just want to give a big shout out to my team. There's been a ton of people that have worked on this, total rewards, talent acquisition, employee relations, so many, our communications team, so many people have contributed to getting us to this place, and it's been a long journey, and I just really want to give a shout out to the team to getting us to this really important milestone today. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you so much, Senior Director of Human Resources, Katie. We appreciate the work that you do, and understand that this has been a long time coming, and just appreciate that you have led your team through a process that's been transparent and fair as well. And so just want to echo what you said. Thank you to your entire team for the hard work that they've put in, the many hours and months that this has taken. I will now open it up to any questions from my colleagues. Commissioner Feldman.
I'd like to pile on. It's been a tremendous undertaking, and you still smile when you present, so I think I'm really delighted to see that it hasn't broken you down yet, or at all. So the one thing I always heard was like, well, the port has to compete with the business sector. And that, so when you talk about defining a salary range, I mean, is it really can we go to the city of Seattle or King County and say that, our numbers are also kind of crazy now with in the 50s on up. So I always find it kind of awkward to be able to say, well, if I'm applying for a GS something versus a 53, so how would an employee know if they're looking at jobs in the city or the county, what is truly comparable? Is there because the GS, or whatever the term is as for government, it would be.
Yeah, there isn't consistency across public sector. I've worked both at the state and the county level, and we've called our salary structure grades different things. We usually use numbers. We made the decision because before the grades were lower, and we wanted to just have a whole new set of numbers. So that's why we start at 50. It's not because there's any relationship to any other public sector organization.
Well, port jobs are that much better,
of
right?
Course they are. Of course they are. So certainly, I mean, as different public sector employees, they would probably look at titles to start start to get a sense. So like you could go to the city of Seattle and look for a human resources consultant. There's probably multiple levels. It's a much larger organization. They could start to look at what those duties are and determine. But it's not a one-for-one kind of match. I think there's a lot of variation in how salary structures are developed for different government entities. But certainly, if you're in a career field and you're looking at what the salaries are for the titles that are relevant to your the job that you're interested in, you'd be able to get some sort of a comparison, but it's not going to be a one-for-one.
So in the development of your range, were you looking at other government agencies?
We sure were.
So that's what framed that title with that range.
The titles are really different, but the work. So when we do survey analysis and look at a variety of services, salary surveys that include both public and non-public, so private sector individuals. We look at an airline survey, other things that help inform how we then come together. So we look for a job match based on the duties. So if you look at the duties, we're going to look at in those survey products that we purchase to be able to find the best match, and then we look at those together. We try to find multiple matches from different surveys before we come up with our rate. Keisha, if you want to add any additional, she is our Director of Total Rewards and oversees the team that does all that market pricing work for us.
Yeah, nothing really more to add other than that's what that market reference value represents, is what is that median salary based on the survey data. So it's broad.
All right, last thing. So I know this tremendous part of this was to try to get the internal structure fair and consistent, and I have great confidence that you've done the statistical work to make that possible. I'm just wondering, can one say that for like the same type of work that port jobs are slightly higher than the mean than the rest of our brethren government agencies, or are we like right in there? I mean, if people are looking for work.
Sure. I mean, I think the big move that we made when we adopted the new salary structure was to move the market median to the 25th percentile. Many organizations put that at the midpoint. That means there's not as much growth opportunity above the market reference point, where we now have 75% of our salary range above the market reference point for our jobs. I think that makes us incredibly competitive. And if, I could certainly go and look at the city, the county, the state, and I think we would do quite well for ourselves in how we've designed our system.
Hear that, all potential employers? Thank you.
Come work at the Port of Seattle.
I love that plug. Hearing no further questions for this item, is there a motion and a second to introduce Resolution 3831?
So moved.
Second.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. Commissioners, are there any further debate or discussion on this item? Hearing none, Clerk Hart, please call the roll for the vote. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your names are called.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. 4 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
Very good. The motion passes. Resolution 3831 will be back before the Commission for consideration of adoption at the November 19th meeting. Thank you both again.
Thank you very much.
Moving on in the agenda, we actually have no presentation or staff reports scheduled for today's meeting. So that concludes our business meeting agenda for the day. Are there any closing comments at this time or motions related to committee referrals from commissioners? Hearing none, I will start with Executive Director Metrick. Any closing comments for today?
No, thank you, Commissioners, for all your attention. I mean, 2 big things today, milestones, consideration of the budget, and consideration of the salary and benefits resolution in the comp project there. And just really appreciate all the months of work that have gotten into the culmination of where we are today, and I deeply appreciate that and the iterative process that we built and the refinements in the process as well. So I thank you for all your input and guidance in these efforts.
Great, thank you, Executive Director Metrick. I see Aaron Pritchard, our
I thought just a quick note on a conference I was just able to attend. The conference was in Barcelona, and it was a wonderful location, but more importantly, the Smart City Conference brought together what was cities and focused on mobility, and then had a whole section on ports and the blue economy. And the inspiration I drew from that was really fantastic. Just really the place where cities and ports come together around innovation, and the concept around ports becoming more of a, moving from a landlord position to a marketing position is something that I really drew inspiration as. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us, and I know a lot of commissioners have been working in this area, and I look forward to sort of sharing some of that with us, with you all as we move ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Richard, for that report out. Mr. Metrick, you
Hate
would
to,
like to
hate
share the
to
trip
come back
too?
again, but I can talk a lot about that. But about a Port Authority's roundtable was taking place just before that. But I think the big point, I'll just give you one point, commissioners, and provide additional information, is that ports are seen as the point where the clean energy transition for maritime fuels is going to be happening, and that it's clearly that, and that was a gathering of ports, like-minded ports, to do that. And it's great in that information sharing. It brings back valuable lessons for us that every port around the world in the maritime transportation system is undertaking. And there was a lot of information, but it really is encouraging to see both. It's encouraging, but it's also that everybody sees the same challenges ahead of us as well. So, but it was a great experience. So I just wanted to say that's was one of the major takeaways of that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Metrick. Any additional closing comments, Commissioner Culkins?
I have a couple of thank yous. You're welcome, and a recommendation. First, a thank you to Steve and all of the other veterans who work here at the Port of Seattle. We are grateful for your service, and we're grateful for how that has contributed to your being an extraordinary port leader, and I think that's true throughout our organization, so thank you to all of you. Another thank you to Mary Cruz and also Jose, who organized a listening session in the Duwamish Valley with youth and their families on Wednesday night after the election. It was truly the best antidote to a tough news day, in that I just walked out of there so hopeful. These kids have so much grit and passion and aspiration. It was just a really wonderful experience. You're welcome to future commissioners, whoever they may be, from us, the commission who established an environmental liability fund that is going to make legacy. Sorry, not we have no liability. Legacy fund that it will make it much easier for them to balance budgets in years when there are significant environmental costs. And finally, if you have not had a chance to read the article in the Seattle Times about our being actually the Pacific Northwest premier museum, please read the article about Tommy Gregory and his work at the airport using from 1968 onward, we have been buying public art and displaying it like no other institution or arguably airport in the country. And it was just inspiring to me, and the best part about it is that it's getting bigger and better every year that goes by. So another reason to get to the airport early and spend some more time there, because it's an incredible museum too.
Great comments. Commissioner Fellman.
Well, just reiterate how much work went into doing the budget and how much I appreciate the improvements that we've made along the way. So thank you so much. I wasn't thinking about talking about art, but serving on the art committee, I'll take full credit. No. The idea, though, that what a pleasure it is to serve on the art committee and see all the good work that is being done a little more up close. Tommy's a force of nature, and we really appreciate how much work it takes to do what we do in such a small staff program for such a large undertaking. It's quite extraordinary. Just to bring it down a little bit, besides the election, do you realize, though, that the anti-Semitic stuff that went on in Amsterdam, that just twice again with the soccer fans and things like that, it just so happens that November 9th to 10th is it was like 86th anniversary of Kristallnacht, which is the Night of Broken Glass, which is really the start of World War II, where 267 synagogues, 7,000 businesses, and 30,000 people were arrested in Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. So it was really kind of seeing that work going on in Amsterdam right on the anniversary. It was just like a particularly chilling confluence of events, and the whole thing seems to be just the uncorking of the legitimacy of bigotry and racial horrors that we might see in front of us with this change of administration. And then just the whole, America for Americans. I mean, the only Americans I know in this country are Native Americans. And they're the ones that, or if we're talking about Native Americans, then that's all good. But it's not like this is any place but a beautiful combination of who we are. So it's very, I had to just take note of it and didn't want to leave on a bummer. This was a great day, but it's, I think, forewarning of things to come.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Fellman. I'll just say quickly, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans at the Port of Seattle. And Mr. Metrick, I want to thank you for your service as well. And I also, just for the public, I think it's great that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, did extend the comment period for NEPA. For the public, I know that was something that many folks reached out to the commission in particular, asking for that extension. And so on behalf of the commission, we did submit that letter asking for that extension to happen. And I think it's great, and I hope people utilize that additional time to provide their comments. Yeah, and you should read the Seattle Times tomorrow because Commissioner Fellman and I have an op-ed in there. Shameless plug. Any other public comments? Comments from commissioners? Closing comments? Hearing none, we have no further business, so if there is no objection, we are adjourned, and the time is now 1:55 p.m. Thank you all.